Welcome to We Gotta Talk, a live weekly talk show and podcast where we like to dig deep. From health to relationships to alternative lifestyles and more, the one thing you will always get is a deep dive. I'm Sunny, a 15-year veteran of TV news, freelance writer, blogger, mom of three, and wife. But most of all, I'm just a die-hard oversharer, someone who's genuinely curious about, well, everything around me. And I can't wait for you to join in on these conversations that I promise will impact, inspire, and entertain you. Now, let's talk. All right. Hey, guys. Welcome back to We Gotta Talk with Sunny. It's been a couple of weeks. We've dropped in some interviews that we've done pre-recorded, but we are back live, loving life, living, doing all the good things after this Thanksgiving break. This episode, I have been wanting to do literally for months now, but it made the most sense to put it toward the end of the year so that we can kind of begin to look forward to what's coming up in 2021. Today, we have Lumi The Celestial Astrologer. And Lumi is an astrologer that I recently worked with. I mean, you guys know this by now. I'm on the great spiritual quest of 2020. I'm laughing, but it's actually been a really personally challenging year. And we've had some very recently, very serious family health issues and things that have really, really made me step back and take a look not only at how I'm working, but also how I'm processing emotions and how I'm understanding and moving forward. And I know that so many of you are in the same spot. And, I don't mean to be all secret squirrel about all this stuff. I've mentioned a couple of times about things that are going on, but and when I get permission to share some of the things that have been happening from the people they've been happening to, I will happily let you know because it's all part of the bigger picture this year, and I do think it's reflected in my work. But I'm one of those weirdos who really likes to just check in with people before I tell their story for them. So anyway, just know that it's been a dicey 2020, and it's been crazy. Quick couple of housekeeping things before we start with Lumi. I hope you guys all had a great Thanksgiving. We were very low key around here. We had just my in-laws. Wherever you're listening, we're in Florida, so we're kind of the wild, wild west of the coronavirus. We were a state that was hit really hard, really quickly. And we, like the rest of the country, kind of eased up a bit, but our eased up during the past few months was still kind of relatively high to the rest of the country. But all of this to say, we've been mostly living our lives as normal as possible within our bubble because we have the ability to be outside and let the kids run outside and play activities and play sports and things. But there is definitely a little bit of a change in the air here as well. And if Florida is changing. I'm finally starting to follow the rules a little bit more than the rest of the country is too. But a super, super easy and very chill holiday. We got takeout because Mama don't have time to cook. I mean, it was just too much to get up and moving and get multiple courses made. So we did takeout. We had the family over, just the kids and Andrew and me. And yeah, the Elf on the Shelf is back, which I am not a fan of in our household. My mode for parenting is like, the world's okay as parent, not creative. Like I'm not the mom who's going to show up with anything monogrammed for my kids ever. I rarely buy the younger ones if they can grow into their older siblings' clothing, new stuff. Super, I don't know, just chill. So Elf on the Shelf is a really difficult concept for me to execute every day because it's something extra I have to remember all the time. And I often fail. So thank God for Andrew. So we're moving Buddy, our guy's name is Buddy, all over the mugs and the cups yesterday and finally found a spot. But it's that time of year. So we're just grateful that you're here and that you're ready to go on a little bit of a spiritual journey with me today. I'm going to mention this during the interview too, but I think it's worth saying at the beginning of the show. People hear the word astrologer or they hear spiritual advisor. They hear anything that falls outside of the realm of a traditional religion and kind of get a little itchy or weird or think it's woo-woo. Let me tell you why I believe in this kind of stuff. Not only did Lumi give me just a spot on amazing reading myself, but this is something that to an extent is based in science. And I know that people are interested in this because one of the biggest hits on my blog that keeps getting traffic is predictions for 2021, astrological predictions for 2021. So, if you're approaching this with any level of hesitation, or you're wondering, okay, why do we need this type of assessment or prediction of what's going to happen? I just urge you to kind of push that doubt or that criticism to the side, because I promise you, your mind is going to be blown when you hear how accurate a lot of this is. So anyway, okay, before we get to Lumi in a couple of minutes, I do want to mention a quick sponsor, Vitamin and Me, which is essentially Match.com for vitamins. This is a group I've been working with for months now, so I wanted to tell you a little bit more about them and what they do.
Vitamin and Me is all about your health and your wellness. Think of it as a Match.com for vitamins. This company was founded by a Johns Hopkins educated nutritionist, and the whole point of Vitamin and Me is to help you find the perfect vitamins and supplements for your routine. And the best part is they do this for kids too. So here's how it works. You take a short quiz on their website, communicate with the team if you have any questions, and then select your delivery schedule. Vitamin and Me sets you up with the perfect, already vetted vitamin brands that you know and trust, and helps you build a customized routine that improves your health. I've personally been using the Claire Labs Omega-3 Minis and the Trace Minerals Complete Food Multi, both of which I really love. I love relying on Vitamin and Me's delivery schedule and their team of experts when I have any questions about the vitamins I'm taking. One size does not fit all, so that's why Vitamin and Me is not a vitamin manufacturer. They're a vitamin matching service, and I have been so happy, guys, with the results I've seen from my vitamin routine so far.
Here is where we tell you about a great deal. We got to talk 30. Use that code when you go to vitaminandme.com. Take the quiz, get your personal recommendations, and use that code for 30% off of your first order, which is a huge deal. We got to talk 30, vitaminandme.com. All right, let's bring in our guest. I can't wait for this. Lumi, the Celestial Astrologer. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, your story is interesting because not only do you do what you do as a practicing professional, but this is a connection that you've had for quite a while. So I want you to start by telling us what your connection to the spirit or the other, not the other dimension, that sounds super woo-woo, but your connection to the greater world when you realized you had that.
Well, I all started out when I was like 11 years old, when I began to question things. I always had this natural inclination to be sensitive towards the feelings of others. I was very emotional as a child too. And I've always wanted to know like the meaning of life. Like I just always had these kind of questions when I was a young girl. And I went to Catholic school too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was in Catholic school. And one of my good friends at the time in elementary school, she asked me the simple question that everybody must have been asked at one point in their life: what is your sign? I was like, what does that mean? She's like, when is your birthday? And I was like, March 12th. She's like, oh, you're Pisces like me. And I was like, what does that mean? And she's like, Lumi, she's like, you got to read this book. So she put this book of astrology, just simply sun signs, in my hand. And I'm telling you, like, the rest is history. Like, I was like so immersed into the reading of it. Like, I loved learning primarily about myself. And typically astrologers have, they have to go through the whole process of understanding themselves before they actually would help others, obviously. But in my case, I just loved the storytelling element that astrology could provide. It provides some like clarity to certain situations that you may go through in your life. And I just became very immersed in the material, like over time. Like in my teens, I started reading more about other people's sun signs and some like typical placements that you would look in a birth chart or in astrology terms. Then I just went to college for a couple of years, and I was also a practicing beautician at the time. So I had this natural ability to really be connected to people on a personal level. And I always found myself centered and always questioning what their birth chart story was about behind the chair when I was doing their hair. So I was really, I was always just like catering to their beauty needs. I was also like, in a way, like a advisor, counselor. Right. I was always like offering like spiritual advice and things. And the actual like whenever they would put their charts on their phone, I would be so like intrigued, and I would tell them things like what will likely happen to them, or their kind of story that plays out in their lives, like the themes that they go through. And they were really like profoundly, my book just moved there, and they were like, that never happens. But anyway, they were just like really intrigued by when that happened, whenever I would point those things out.
So I should mention too, I connected with you through the Rebecca Gordon Astrology Network. You're one of the astrologers that works under her very respected umbrella. And she is someone I know, and I know you do this too, who provides guidance for people, not only in their personal life to help understand sort of where they were born, why they are, how they are, but also helps people even plan their businesses, their personal lives, big decisions they're making. So, I really just want to hit this right off the top because unfortunately, you probably spend a lot of your time convincing other people that this is in fact legitimate or based on legitimate science a lot of the time. And I kind of want to address those concerns right away because there will always be the people who imagine the headscarf and crystal ball when they think of the astrologer at the, at the carnival, at the, traveling through town. And it really is, there is so much more, at least from my perspective that I was surprised by, of a science behind this and literal mapping of planets and stars and things of why you are or how you are. So I kind of want to put that out there right away. I mean, you've been with that network for how long, Lumi?
The RGA network just began, but I worked closely with Rebecca for about 5 years, 6 years, actually, almost. I went under her guidance. I was her her student.
Right.
And she mentored me for so many years, and I love her to tears. Like, she's such a great guide and mentor on all levels. So I would say, just like going back to what you said, trying to convince people, I don't do that anymore. I used to do that. I just feel like people, whenever they do question what I do, I would mention a certain thing or two, but they would come back to me years later asking me, how did I know about certain things? And I'm like, the skeptics usually come back, believe it or not, but it's when they're ready for it.
Were you seeing big life events for these people? And were you just coming out right away, like, listen, this is going to happen in 4 or 5 years? Like, what was happening?
When I was like talking to these individuals, I would just mention certain characteristics that they probably played out in their lives, like certain patterning that they were repressing in their early childhood and things like, and then they would eventually go through some kind of spiritual quest and awareness of themselves. And then they're like, yeah, you knew about like something that happened in my childhood, but I didn't want to state it. How did you know these things? And I would point out like certain aspects in the chart and how it would play out in their lives.
Yeah, that happened during our reading too. Yeah. I forget what the wording was. I have to go back and listen, but something like you were like, there was a period of like, I forget what you said, something referencing like, not an illness, but something that someone thought was happening with me. And I went through a whole period as a young child where I was being tested for all of
your voice was repressed, right? It felt like you were always silenced for your beliefs. Yeah, I remember that.
They tested me for a battery of developmental issues because I was so quiet and inward turning. And I was a second child. So my sister was just bursting with energy and charm and charisma. And then I come along and I'm like a turtle in my shell. And I mean, really couldn't be, coaxed out to be expressive in any way, which is ironic given what I do now. But you hit on that in a way that I was really shocked because I think people in the other chart, I haven't done a master chart reading like you've done, but the other sort of spiritual experiences that I've had, no one has ever really picked up on that. So that was pretty crazy that you hit on that. And it was right in the chart, just like you did. So when you were working with people in the early days, now it's one thing to schedule an appointment with you and to give the time of birth, the place of birth, etc. But when you're just talking with people in the beginning and you don't have the opportunity to know all of their exact information, can you still read people and what and who they are?
I'm kind of I am an intuitive. First off, I've always had this natural ability to pick up on certain energies of people. I even when I was a child, I used to see auras clearly.
Can you read my aura?
I have a lot of yellow. I think I told you that before. Yellow is usually all about asserting yourself, power in the center. There's a lot of creative potential that you want to push forward with your ideas. And I know that you have this kind of power of assertion through your show and everything, which is really fitting for you.
I'm working on it.
Yeah, and you're delivering, and I see it in you very clearly. But in my case, I used to see it very clearly as a child. It was like first instant, like I could tell like what color they are, like in terms of their energy, what they're going through. The gifts turned off though, because my linear mind kicked in at the age of 7. That's usually when the child's spiritual gifts kind of get repressed because schooling gets in the way. Not to say I'm degrading schooling or anything, but they kind of give you more of the logical mind in knowing like what you see tangibly is only real, but what you see beyond, it's actually not. So
let's talk about that. And then I want to get into the specifics of birth charting and things like that. Why have people, why have we as a society begun to degrade that experience of humanity? Of course, I agree with you. Schooling is important, and practical ways of applying our logical mind are important, right? But people who are connected or feel connected in a way with the spiritual world are often, I mean, they're laughed at, or back in the olden days, they were persecuted and burned at the stake and blah, blah, blah. What do you see happening in our world right now with a collective sort of addressing of our spiritual side? Are we moving away from that? Or is this year kind of moving us back towards seeing that?
It's moving us back towards seeing that. I see that very strongly. You could see a lot of programs out there where they're actually promoting spiritual advisors. They're promoting lots of like themes that are like covering like ghostly visitations and things like that. Like that's been in mainstream media for some time, but this was like only like in the cinema, you know? Mm-hmm. But I'd say like because of like, I'm not going to say like I watch reality shows on a regular basis, but if you see like the mainstream reality shows, they would always enlist the help of a spiritual guide or a psychic on the show just to like show predictions. And I really feel like it was like slowly like making its entrance back into mainstream media. So just so people can, I think it's just meant for us to really reestablish that kind of connection. So personally, when it started to become more silenced over time, I have to say that's when religious institutions became more mainline of belief systems. I think people just didn't know how to really harness the gifts correctly back in the day, you know?
Do you see an intersection too between traditional practices of religion, no matter what the religion may be, and just basic spirituality? I am a practicing Catholic, and I do, ironically, since starting meditation or any other form, like I you know, for a while dabbled in like a form of chanting, like I forget what type of.
It's like mantras.
Yeah,
mantras,
yeah, right? Like a Buddhism kind of
mantras.
chant.
Yeah,
mantras. And I noticed that in my religion, in the Catholic religion, the repetitive nature of prayers, praying the rosary, actually really strongly resembled the mantras that I was repeating in that. And I was pleased to find that sort of intersectionality, because it shows me that there are so many paths that we are all trying to go upward, right? For lack of a better term, not to heaven, but
we're all wanting to transcend beyond this 3D way of thinking. Yes.
Right. It was promising to me, because we've kept those worlds apart, right? We've kept dogmatic religion separate from spirituality, and we've sort of made fun of, each has made fun of the other, but there really are beautiful ways that they intersect. And I love seeing that.
Mm-hmm. For myself, I'm not affiliated with any religion. I like to immerse myself with all into understanding. I've always been that way.
Right.
For myself, though, personally, Sony, I just want to disclose to you, I actually was born Muslim, but I was enrolled into a Catholic school.
Please tell me about this. Wait, I think it's beautiful. Listen,
Isn't it really fascinating how this happened for me?
Okay, so wait, pause. We have to talk about this. You have a very unique perspective, especially given how Islam as a religion has been treated in this country. Yeah. What do you, I'm only going to ask you for broad brushstrokes.
Okay.
I do want to get into like the 2021 stuff.
No worries.
After having practiced in both of those religions, do you feel, this is going to come out like very basic, and I don't want it to come out this way, but I don't know how to say it. You feel like one way is better than the other. Like, why do we fight so much? Because I feel like we're all kind of on the same path toward enlightenment, but what have you noticed about each of those religions that was beautiful and also restrictive? That why don't we mix well is what I'm saying.
You know what I think, Sony, it's just, it's the main men that are actually running these institutions that are actually distorting the image of the overall message in each religion. Mm-hmm. That's my opinion. I think every religion has something beautiful to bring to the table. it's really the man that runs it. I'm not saying man in particular, the gender role. No, but it's the human, the actual person that's actually running these institutions that's actually distorting the way it's run. Because they're all promoting, every religion, the same message. It's peace and love. Peace, love, spreading light. That's pretty much what I see. And just by studying and by seeing both sides, I actually gain perspective. I honor and respect all religions because of that. And I even studied Buddhism. I studied Hinduism. I studied Taoism, like everything possible, like over time. And I just love it. I've always been immersed with different belief systems. And I started going to like spiritual healing modalities like Reiki. And I just see everything being like the main message. It's just all about promoting love. That's all it is. For myself personally, in terms of the restrictions, again, it's man trying to exude control over the masses of people, just so they feel that they have to follow every word that they say and not practice their own sense of judgment and discernment, not to sound controversial or anything.
I love it. No, as a Buddhist Catholic, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I love all the main prophets for every religion. I honor and respect them all because they're all very similar in their own way. They all have the same energy, I feel, and they're ascended masters. That's what they are.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
It's leading us toward enlightenment. So, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about this year and next year, Lumi, because we brought you on to really dig into not only what we can look ahead to, but what we have to take from 2020. So let's start there. We talked already about you feeling like we are headed back toward a more spiritual path and recognizing that side of ourselves. What else have you noticed about 2020 from an astrological perspective that we've seen reverberate in the greater world?
Well, for starters, in the beginning of 2020, we had the three big bad planets. I'm not telling like you guys that it's always bad, but the mainly outer planetary bodies have a certain energy of affecting the collective. So I'm going to name the three. It's going to be Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto. They were all in the sign of Capricorn at the same time. Capricorn has this certain energy that is cool and damp. It's like that kind of energy alone. So you can only imagine what it does to the bodies of people, right? Coolness and dampness leads to viruses being spread. I just want to start off on that because people mainly remember 2020 as being the year COVID was born, or COVID was basically flared out in that time of year. So I would say to begin with, go ahead, Sonia, what were you going to say?
No, it's just fascinating that there's an energy associated with planets. I didn't know that.
It has temperatures. It even has certain kind of qualities of elements in it too. So to start, Capricorn has the energy of really, it's like shifting the lens on hierarchy, structures, systems, and things like that. Okay.
So that was in dominance at the beginning of 2020.
Yes. And that's when it created its first, it's called the triple conjunction, which means they're all in the same degree at the same time. So usually it sends shock waves out, not on that particular day, which was around January 24th of 2020. It takes effect within a couple of weeks after. Like that's when you feel it. What were you going to say, Sonia?
That timed out perfectly. I mean, because the virus in February and began to spread more rapidly in March, April, May.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that was the beginning of the year. As we progressed to the part where the virus was well known, we changed our policies and our practices to sort of work around it. Let's talk about the middle, like the second quarter and the half point of the year,
second quarter. It's very funny that you mentioned that. In April, the second conjunction happened was Jupiter and Pluto. So I'm going to tell you about the energies of the planets too. Jupiter's the expander. It's meant to like expand rapidly into shifting the lens on issues on things. But with Pluto, it's meant to dissolve things in particular. Saturn is the structure of things. So it's like such a big paradox with those energies working all together. And that's the reason why people were feeling a lots of over tensious energy because of this reason, because they're all pretty much like tearing out three ways in energy, if that makes any sense.
It makes total sense. Yeah. I mean, like the dichotomy sort of was.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, God, and we talked about this during my personal reading. This is not news to anybody. This year was so hard on so many people spiritually. Was there a way around that? Or were we all, despite when we were born and what, sun sign we were born under, were we all destined for a little bit of chaos this year?
All astrologers were seeing this. Like, we didn't know like a virus was going to go haywire this year.
Right.
No, but we did sense that something was going to be going through like a lot of earth shattering changes. And this goes into the structures of humanity. So the last time this happened around was the Spanish flu. Did you know that?
No. So we had the same setup.
Similar kind of conjunction. Yes. It was around the Spanish flu era.
Wow.
So in this case, I'm going to tie it in a little bit with the tension of why humanity endured this, like besides the virus. I mean, it does correlate with each other because everything was happening at the same time. It was just like the fall of structures. The political systems were being constantly in magnifying glass and like assessed and whether it actually serves us moving forward or not. So as I mentioned before, Pluto's the energy of breaking down things, breaking down and really seeing the core essence of issues, while Saturn is more about the sustainer and preserver of these things. Because the Capricorn energy alone, it really is all about like basically hierarchical, like all about like reaching to the top, building up massive foundations of things and leading to something, just making it up there without any consideration about the energies of others. It was just, I'm talking about like more of the dense side of Capricorn energy, because Capricorn energy is really beautiful. It could be transcending when there's a spiritual element to it, spiritual awareness. So that's the reason why the structures were collapsing while the virus was going haywire at the same time. It was just like our health was being impacted. But this whole lockdown actually shifted the lens on us, actually assessing the importance of matters. So we were actually reviewing things more carefully because we were given more time for ourselves and more time to actually really study what's going on behind closed doors.
Yeah, until we're forced to physically stay still, I feel like it's very easy to avoid the lesson. I mean, it's why so many of us stay busy, right? So we don't have to sit still with our thoughts, with our feelings, get quiet and feel that, which, God, I encourage anybody to try to do. I feel like we were in a world where it was like forbidden to stay still and not be busy. But now that we've had, an entire summer where we were just sitting with our feelings and with the feelings of the world, I hope that we all start to do that a little bit more. Let's talk about the end of the year. Here we are in December. We have already been through what most of us feel like was a tremendously difficult year. I really want to know. And I'm laughing because I know that this doesn't matter. The universe doesn't care what we want. Will things be any better as we transition into 2021?
We have to end the year off. You probably heard about eclipse season, right?
Yeah, didn't we just have one? We
had a lunar eclipse 2 days ago.
That's very funny.
Yeah, and this is pointing out to matters that are attaining, that are relating to communication. So it's in the sign. It was in the sign of Gemini. Gemini energy is very much in associating with different kinds of outlets of individuals, bring versatility and diversity to the table, embracing ideas, always questioning things, being curious. So in this case, with a lunar eclipse, it's all about the releasing process of those old ideas that we gathered up over time. So it all depends on where it's hitting in your actual birth chart. But collectively, as a lunar eclipse, we're always going to be feeling like this energy that we're always questioning things. So mind you, eclipse energy actually lasts 6 months. 6 months ahead. Can you see me still, Sony?
Yeah, okay. We're good. We dropped for a second, but
that was interesting. I mean, that's just like the eclipse talk. That's usually happens.
I know. For our reading too, there has been a force field around me that has been literally destroying technology for months now. I feel like I was breaking. I thought we talked about this. Breaking screens. I broke 6 screens of things.
Oh, you never told me this.
I worked with 2 I worked with 2 photographers. One lost her card that she shot on. We shot a bunch of promotional things for this show. She's like, this has never happened before. It happened with a second different photographer a month later. She was like, this has never happened before. I completely lost everything that was, that we shot. So I'm just saying, blame me for the technical difficulty.
You need, if you don't mind me, I'm going to say something. You need a smudge.
I know I've been saging, and I will.
You put sweetgrass after.
Oh, I never heard about that. Okay.
So I would feel, I mean, we're going to spiritual talk right now, and I love this. So saging is actually, it's meant to get rid of the energy, right? Getting rid of like the gunk that's on you or in the space around you. Sweetgrass actually replaces it with nice opportunity. It softens the energy of the space. Okay. So it actually creates those, it softens out the kinks, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So just letting you know. And also,
a lot of kinks around here.
But if you want the best of both worlds, Palo Santo's your best bet. It's both in one. And I love the smell of that. But anyway,
ordering online. Okay, yeah, let's get back to the end of the year.
Going back into a lunar eclipse. So yeah, that's like the 6-month span of energy and awareness of actually really always questioning things. Like that's the overall thing. Now we're going to move towards the solar eclipse around December 14th. And this is in Sagittarius. So the solar eclipse is basically like a super new moon. New moon's all about planting things, manifesting, visualizing your future goals. Now, in this case, I would not recommend anybody to do manifesting work. Usually lunar eclipse season or eclipse season in general is not very, it's like chaotic. It's a little like, like out of the way, like, or all over the place in terms of energy. So with the solar eclipse in Sagittarius, this is all about really reviewing the religions, or not religions, but like the old dogmatic ideas, really releasing or questioning what was before, like what kind of systems we actually fell back upon. That also sets the tone for the year ahead leading up to what we're going to talk about for 2021. So this is something that people will probably immerse themselves into, studying different types of philosophies, theologies, spiritual wisdoms. Like that's like pretty much the overall theme of the year ahead. It's very interesting. It's all about information.
Yes. So what is something we can practically do, knowing that, most people who are busy maybe won't take the time to like dive into understanding a new religion or something? Give us some small good takeaway in this eclipse season. You said December, was it 14th or something?
Yes.
So what can we practically do to harness our energy or protect ourselves or do something that helps us get ready for 2021?
I'd say like always establish a link to a higher power. I firmly believe in the higher power for myself personally. That's why I'm called the Celestial Astrologer. I practice prayer. I practice meditation. I practice little rituals like saging. I'm talking about just like clearing up the space and invoking a prayer of protection from angels. Like that's my approach to astrology. Usually before I do a reading, I'm putting myself into this first before I share what other people could do. Now, for people, what they can do is just instill peace. Try to find space and time to quiet your mind and really focus in on your goals. Always try not to be sidetracked by the external influences. Okay. Mm-hmm. I'm telling you, like when you watch the news on 5 minutes, it's going to really distort your day. I'd say 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes in the night, a little bit probably in the middle of the day. You could probably check in. But I really think people are so immersed into trying to find like something new happening in the day ahead that it actually distracts them for their actual overall goals moving forward. You know what I mean, right?
I totally know. And listen, I was in TV news for 15 years and I know what you mean. I mean, this is a separate discussion, but I know people whose personal health was very poorly impacted just by being constantly plugged into the news cycle. It was stressing them out. It was causing anxiety. It was exactly what you said, distracting them from the present so much so that it was impacting health. I mean, I that's probably not nice of me to say because it's an industry I still have tremendous.
Of course, yeah.
But it's the way I say this all the time. You have to be a smart consumer of news. You have to know what product you're getting, if it's opinion journalism or straightforward. And really, just like Lumi said, make sure that you know when to unplug. Because like a drug, those shows are trying to rope you in and keep you. And if you don't know how to protect your energy from things that might disturb it, then just err on the side of caution, you know? So, because I do think, Lumi, there are people who are drawn to chaos. There are people who,
Yes.
you know, and I can really, I'm into like understanding both sides. Well, if I watch this channel, and I'll watch this channel and see what they say, but it's a nasty cycle. It really is.
They're like really glued into it because they feel like it's a part of their nature. You do what I'm saying? Like it's like a program. That's what they call it, a program into looking at this stuff all day. Like, because it's immersive. If you think about it, there's so many distractions. Like you'll see ads on the side, you'll see bold print, you'll see like little ads here and there, like in different colors. It's meant to draw you in. I'm not saying it's bad. Like you need some advertisements and things like that. Sure. But I think it's actually sidetracking you from the overall goal. Like that's how I feel. And that's also like why I feel like astrology is such a gift for me personally, because I unplug. I don't stay on the computer all day unless I'm doing chart readings.
Right.
But I'll actually look at books. I'll read books, everybody. Like it's actually very important to tangibly hold something in your hands and actually read things to learn and engage your mind in. Even audiobooks are great too, and podcasts. Like that's fantastic. Just immerse your mind with something that's going to help you.
Right. Okay. Let's dig into 2021.
Sure.
So we are in the eclipse season to end 2020. You've mentioned there's like a little bit of chaos, so we need to find our peace, root and ground ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
What does the early part of 2021 look like?
So there's also two major trends that's happening this month, which I'm so happy to report. And that leads into the reason why I was mentioning information and communication and also technology. So Jupiter, the expander planet, as I was mentioning before, is moving to the sign of Aquarius. It was in Capricorn for the last 2 years. Now, that's going to be in Aquarius around December 17th, and Saturn's going into Aquarius around December 16th. So it's like within a couple of days range. Now, in this case, it sets the tone for forward thinking, innovations, going through different systems and really aligning yourself into collective causes. It really is interesting to see this happening because we have been in lockdown for some time and really isolated from others. But I feel like people are becoming more banded together and wanting to actually see how they can contribute to the world. It's like that kind of energy, I feel. Does that make sense, Sony?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's promising. I mean, practically speaking, is there anything that, like I asked for the last thing, that we can do to keep that energy balanced?
For what do you mean?
For, you said we're getting to Jupiter, which is the expander planet. And I don't, all I know is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. And I feel like that was a bad thing.
That's what's happening right now. Yes.
So
and that's why Aquarius like in flow coming through actually.
And the bad stuff. That's what I'm worried about.
I'm gonna tell you. That's like one thing to keep in mind. It's just like really focus in on service. Focus in on your way of how you're going to contribute to mankind. Now, the other shoe to drop is that it's going to be forming a square to the planet called Uranus. Now, Uranus has been in the sign of Taurus since 2016. Now, in this case, the last time this happened was when the market crashed in the 1930s. The Great Depression happened.
Oh, God.
Right? But that's questioning how money is actually meant to be harnessed moving forward. Even in the Great Depression, they didn't really know how to deal with money at the time. They were really printing money like a madhouse, like at the time, if you recall in history textbooks and everything. This time around, though, it's really focusing in on how money will actually be used moving forward. Bitcoin.
That's what I was going to say. Bitcoin.
Yes, and that's technology. Now. And Uranus is actually the planet that is ruled by Aquarius. It's technology, innovations, going through earth-shattering changes with the ways and means of how we make money. So our careers are going to really change a lot too.
Okay, wait. We need to sort of distill this into potential scenarios. So this means this is a good time to look into investing into Bitcoin.
I was gonna say that actually. I wrote that on my little when I was writing down horoscopes.
Let me text my husband real quick. But
I say invest your time into really reading more into this technology systems in regards to the future trends with how money is meant to be harnessed. It's more technology based, most likely.
So that's inevitable. I heard so many, I mean, not to devolve into a technological discussion, but people doubted whether Bitcoin would ever be used or accessible at like a mass scale, or that people would understand it enough to use it. But I hear you saying that change is inevitable, at least.
It's going to be different though, like in terms of how money's going to be made. Like you probably noticed in restaurants lately, they're like, we don't take cash, we take credit.
Yes, I saw that.
That's Uranus and Taurus in action. Like it's not in late degree. It's like still 6 or 7 degrees right now. But you see how when it just began 2016, it wasn't really felt until now, 4 years later. So usually when planets actually change signs, you actually feel the aftershock of effects later down the line. So moving forward into how I mentioned before, Jupiter and Saturn going to a sign of Aquarius, this is going to be focusing in on our ideas and concepts and how we're going to actually contribute back to mankind. Now, with the square to Uranus, though, squares usually tensions in the chart, the overall chart. So it could be a clash of ideas. And mind you, if you see Uranus being in Taurus, that's an earth sign. And Saturn and Jupiter in Aquarius, that's an air sign. You can only imagine those two elements together. You really can't get to anything at this point. Because if you think about it, water and earth grows things. Fire and air spreads more light. So when it comes to the actual earth and air element, it's not touching yet. So in terms of the ideas and concepts, it's in midair. It's not going to be fully rooted just yet. But I'd say just focus in on your actual thoughts and concepts and hold on to your vision and focus on service. I'm just going to say that. I'm not telling you to like enlist yourself to every nonprofit organization possible, but just I feel like the collective is feeling this need. I've noticed a lot of my clients are saying like, how am I going to give back? They're all, I feel it. And I see it with people when they're talking to me. They're like, I want to give back to humanity. That's pretty much the age of Aquarius in full effect. That's the energy alone. So that's the positive end.
Positive, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I like the takeaway too, because when things feel chaotic, you can always focus outward. I remember my mom saying to me once, my sister and I were going through a hard time, and she said, the best thing I can tell you right now, you're not going to change this. This is what's happening.
Yeah.
Do something good for others. That is your best medicine right now. And it stuck with me because it's true. It adds good to the world while removing that focus from ourselves, because at the end of the day, it's not just about our experience in the world. It's about everybody's collective experience. That's what 2020 has taught us, right? That we're all connected, whether or not we wanted to acknowledge it before. Like, we're all in this together. It was easy to forget that before this pandemic happened.
Can you imagine how separate we were before? We were so glued to our phones before. We were isolated. We isolated ourselves from humanity. It's very interesting. Like, we were so immersed in our own little bubble, but because we were forced to be in our own bubble in home, now we want to like break free and actually immerse with different groups and networks now at this point. And we're more closer now than before.
Yeah, I agree. It's ironic because we're physically distant, but it's strange.
It's all ideas and communication.
Big trends or big words that you notice for next year as we get into 2021?
You know, the one thing I want to mention to you, it's funny that you mentioned that. I noticed the word triggers before. Triggered me. You triggered me. That energy reminds me of Uranus, the Uranus energy, because Uranus is like the game-changing planet. It actually flips things around and actually creates lots of growth and expanding ideas of yourself. Now, for the growing trends of 2021, the words that I've noticed is just collaboration and networking. Like, that's the one, those are the two words I've noticed. And that's usually Aquarius words. You know, spreading knowledge, spreading ideologies, really collaborating. That's what I pretty much hear at this moment.
Do you think we will see any, I've said this before, that the pandemic doesn't recognize the Julian calendar, and like, I don't really think it cares that we're ticking over into January. In fact, in China, it's not going to be the new year. Like, there are whole civilizations that don't adhere to our particular calendar all the time. In some religious beliefs as well. But all that being put aside, knowing that this is how we operate, our society generally as a whole recognizes, what can we expect in the early part of 2021?
I would say just the early part of 2021, because Jupiter and Saturn are going to the sign of Aquarius, it would be very much into questioning our own technologies involving how we're going to help mankind. I'd say with the innovations of medicines would likely be more open field into like actually collaborating with more foreign nations in regards to that. In regards to finding the actual solution to this, like that's going to become more open field in that case. You understand, right?
Yeah, more collaboration to end this crap.
Yes.
Yes. Do you think? Do you see, or are the charts saying there will be an end to the health dangers of this pandemic? Can the chart play anything out on that end?
It's gonna like fester off a little bit. But I'd say like viruses are going to be clearly much more invested in time and studying. Right. It would even be to the effect of actually coming up with preventative means of avoiding viruses from actually impacting communities or populations, I should say. I even see that we'll actually come up with ways of studying how viruses play out and see if we can stop it in place. So almost like microbiology studies are going to be much more mainstream in terms of studying moving forward.
We hear a lot of reports coming out now about the rapid spread of the virus during the winter months. Do you see us going into the early part of 2021 with that same sort of virulence and intensity of the virus? Or is there a point in the chart or anything that you've seen that shows that kind of going down in the early part? Because I feel like we're prepared to deal with this through the winter, but spring is going to come around and people are going to be like, oh, when is this going to be over?
I think because of the air and water energy, it's going to taper off because there's not much Earth cluster. Like we called it the Capricorn stack of 2020, you know, like all those 3 major planets. But because it actually is more of an air element, it's going to be more focused in on, I'd say mental health issues, really. Like people are going to become more immersed with counseling. In terms of the virus itself, I sense it's going to taper off a bit later next year, though.
What does like the middle part of next year look like? You know, saying we make it through the winter and spring feeling relatively positive. I mean, do you see anything that you predict as far as a trend for the middle?
May? Okay.
Yeah.
So I mentioned before, Jupiter's going to Aquarius. Sometimes it goes so far ahead that it's going to go into the next sign following, which Jupiter will be in the sign of Pisces in May, from May until July. So Jupiter is actually very happy in Pisces. But when you mix Neptune in the mix, because Neptune's also in Pisces. So I'm going to tell you what Neptune's about. Neptune has been in the sign of Pisces since 2008. The overall energy of Neptune alone is all about mysticism, spiritualism, psychics, like all those things, spiritual gurus and all those things. Jupiter expands on that. So with Jupiter being in Pisces as well, I feel like it's going to actually bring forth a lot of austere opinions about which religion is actually going to be most mainstream or which spiritual system is going to be most mainstream. It's almost like dogma kind of energies will come through around that time.
That sounds dangerous for like geopolitics, to be honest with you.
Yes. People will become much more susceptible to falling prey to believing anything. So I'd say strongly practice discernment and see if you resonate with it energetically. See if you align with it and try not to just fall for anything that you read, you know?
I heard someone mention this, maybe I read it in another article, that this fallow period, for lack of a better term, like, the period where we're all turning inward. It's the time of crop season where things are working underground and aren't blooming, right? To sort of explain that, is going to last a lot longer than the next several years. I wonder, in fact, the not prediction, but the assessment that I heard was that we're in a fallow period, like sort of energetically and spiritually speaking, for 5 years. I mean, I didn't want to hear that, but I read it and I was like, I have to ask Lumi.
That's Neptune and Pisces energy that you're talking about. It's been since 2008, but it's going to shift signs around 2026.
Oh, that's
into Aries. Yeah, it's very interesting that you mentioned that, because
does that mean we have 5 years of this energy, this collective
all this feeling like I need to escape. I need to find new outlets into finding my own inner divinity. It actually is a beautiful thing, but you have to really be grounded in this approach, because we're made from Earth. We're not meant to be like totally immersed with the skies or like different ideologies and things like that. So I'd say it's a beautiful concept to actually enlist yourself or get yourself into, practicing something like some kind of spiritual practice, but really practice discernment. I think that's really essential for your well-being. But with Jupiter added to the mix, it expands on that. So that's why I'm saying just be mindful of what you're actually immersing in concepts. Just try to stand back and see if it actually aligns with your beliefs. Because cults, it's like cultish. That's how the feeling I get. That
actually maps out very precisely with some of the conspiracy theories that we've seen spreading online, or belief systems that we've seen spreading online.
Yes.
It actually maps out quite directly with that. I think the advice and the takeaway there too is don't go to Facebook for your news. I did a whole episode too about this a while back, and talking about surrounding yourselves with people who are different, who don't just echo your exact sentiments. Hear it out and then discern, like what you said, Lumi, is best for you based on the feeling and the vibration and the sense of peace you get from it. But I do think that's good advice, is to practice discernment, because we are really surrounded right now by a lot of people who know all the answers, right? Everybody knows everything 100%. This is
and that's egoic in a way. It's almost like overinflation of spiritualism, and it's just like people are vulnerable because, again, they've been like such an isolation for so long, and then that's why they're like, I need to find some kind of outlet to escape.
But is it going to be like feeling like this in our hearts and spirits for 5 years? Like,
for the next year, you're gonna feel it more, because there's a lot of air and water energy mix. So you can only imagine. So I already told you about air and earth before, which is almost like ideas won't take root just yet. But I'm telling you, just hold on to your beliefs, okay? With grave, like not grave, but like just hold it on to the best of your ability, okay? And just focus in on, meditate on that. Now with the water and air, that is like emotionality and communicating that. So I'd say in order to counteract this, enlist the help of a counselor, talk to a coach, talk to somebody you could fully trust. It's just really important to actually really express these emotions, because I feel like if you repress it over time, this is when you fall prey to these actual belief systems, or you fall prey to any outlet that you look at,
Right. What are some bright spots next year that you see, whether you can identify a specific period of time that will feel lighter, or you can equip us with some advice? We need some good news about next year. So what can you tell us that's positive?
Well, it's stagnancy. I'm not going to lie, Sony. For me personally, it's stagnancy when it comes to like the actual like elements alone. I would say just do your research about like the actual finances, like look into like different outlets and reinventing your own businesses and all. Another thing to consider is really to like, again, just practice your own sense of grounding with these kind of belief systems. I'm going to emphasize that a lot more. Okay. But let me see what I saw ahead of time. Hold on one moment. I already told you about the health.
Right.
And Neptune and Jupiter in the mix. So just practice discernment. And I think like the overall, like, beautiful part of 2021 is a belief into actually contributing to others, like being very more collective based as opposed to personal based, and just being closed off to different people.
So gosh, I really wanted this to be an overall.
I know a lot of astrologers feel this way. And like, we all talk to each other into discussing this. Like we have like all circle groups, but we all mutually agree that it's very, I'd say it's very much all about really researching carefully about things, like just research and really assert yourself, assert your beliefs too, but look more on the linear standpoint as well. Try to balance out the logics behind your beliefs or beliefs that you read about.
Mm-hmm. No, it makes total sense. I'm hearing you say, do your research and land where you will, but be open-minded. Gosh,
it doesn't have to be doom and gloom, Sony. I think we have the power of free will to actually decide what we do with our time given. Okay. Research, just read lots of books, become immersed in different ideologies and be open to concepts, but also practice self luxury and really like take care of yourself, take care of your bodies and all those things too. good nutrition. That helps ground you more too, because the earth energy is not so great this next year ahead. It's more air. So I'd say like, you know, people are prone to really being into their own mental space in their heads, you know, thinking about certain things and like really just reading just anything and believing in anything. I think people have to be more grounded in their own approach. And this could be through like earth-based practices, which would be grounding, like meditation or yoga, or going outside in nature and actually like sensing flower essences. Like try to implement more earth-based modalities in your life. Because we're so
just go out barefoot. I know not many people can do this time of year, like grounding mats. You know, I'm a big believer in grounding and like feeling on your feet. So, I mean, that's something practical as a layperson, not a spiritual expert, that I do. I know I feel better when I go outside with my kids and just like literally we all just stand barefoot and play outside. Simple things like that give me a sense of peace. One final specific question about 2021, then we'll tell everybody where to follow you and stuff. Does the chart show any indication as to when this virus will be either at a herd immunity status, the vaccine will have kicked in, a tapering off in a dramatic way? Is there anything in 2021's chart that is showing the end of this nasty virus?
You know, the chart's funny whenever you look at these things. However, I'm going to say this just so people can understand. The air energy actually lightens things out. So that's good news. The Jupiter and Saturn going into the sign of Aquarius, that's actually going to lighten the things about. So people become much more invested in their time into researching about how to treat the virus and things. So in the spring and summer, it looks better around that time frame. Okay. This time around though, just be mindful of the time that you're spending and try to like practice like whatever precautions that has been stated on, you know, on TV and everything like that. Just, you know, safety, social distance, just invest your time into actually like building up your immune system. So that goes into saying, like what I mentioned before, people are going to become much more preventative. They're going through preventative means of treating their bodies before this virus could hit them. So this goes through nutrition, proper nutrition. And that's the earth energy. That's like really, it's important to actually invest your time into researching self-care rituals for you. Okay. It's your temple, this body, you know, we're not just our mind. We're not just our emotions. Our body is in need of proper care. So just try to, you know, practice good habits and everything too. So yeah, invest your time in this kind of case.
Lumi, thank you so much for coming on. I mean, I can't speak highly enough of our separate time together when you did my individual chart. And I encourage anybody who is curious about what the stars say about you to reach out. Lumi, tell us where we can find you and connect for that.
You can find me on Instagram. It's The Celestial Astrologer. That's my handle. And my website is www.thecelestialastrologer.com.
Awesome. And we can book right through there for us. Okay. All right, Lumi, you are wonderful and your energy is great. And you are just so kind to share your wisdom with us. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me, Sony. I had fun.
See you soon. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening. Wow, that was a lot. It was really interesting to hear Lumi talk about we're not maybe necessarily getting this immediate happy ending we have all hoped for, just like an immediate end to this virus in this strange way that we're living. But I think the takeaways of grounding ourselves in routine and good nutrition and spiritual exploration are literally the most important takeaways anyway. No matter what's happening around us, I feel like we can always rely on those things to keep ourselves feeling healthy and strong. So my wish for you this week and through the end of the year is that you're able to take a little time away for that type of self-care. I'm so grateful that you spent some time with us today. We have so many good shows coming up and I can't wait for you to be there for them. Please tell a friend about the show. Also leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts in particular. That actually helps these shows to get out to the people who might enjoy them, find them fun, helpful, useful. Follow me on Instagram @SunnyAbata. And that's it. We'll see you guys next week with more goodness on We Gotta Talk. Thanks so much for watching and listening.